Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is a story-driven action-adventure game by Naughty Dog. In it, you play as Nathan Drake, a now retired treasure hunter who lives happily with his wife Elena. That is, until your thought-to-be-dead brother comes to you for help. My name's Globku, and today here on Magical Noob, we bring you our official review of Uncharted 4.
Hey, how's it going?
The story of the Uncharted games has always been a big focal point of the series, and Uncharted 4's story is better than its predecessors in every way. When I first heard they were introducing a new character, Mr. Sam Drake, the protagonist's brother, it felt kind of forced. This character had never been mentioned in an Uncharted game before, and it sounds like someone who would have come up in a conversation or two in the previous games. However, seeing how it was justified and executed on screen, it all actually felt very natural. Sam tags along with Nate in a number of missions, during which you get the opportunity to hear them trade one-liners or just giving each other a hard time, as brothers usually do, and he quickly became one of the characters that I cared about the most in the series. The voice acting is phenomenal as well. Sam Drake is one of Troy Baker's finest works, which really helped me bond with the character. There are some other new characters, acquaintances, new villains that are really believable too, especially Rafe. He's a much more believable antagonist than the previous ones, who were just full of evil intent. This one's motivations are easier to grasp, and the character is overall a much better fit for the Uncharted setting. The protagonist, Nathan Drake, also feels more human than ever. Not so much like a wisecracking killing machine, but more so of a character with real-life struggles after presumably retiring at the end of Uncharted 3. In fact, the overall story is a lot more character-focused. There's still a treasure hunt going on, but this time the characters really question how much they're willing to risk for the prize, and the answer differs depending on who you ask that question. It has a heartfelt tone that perhaps wasn't present in the previous games, and I love the game even more for it. The narrative evolves in very interesting ways. There's a lot in Uncharted 4 that we first saw in The Last of Us. Not only do you have the traditional cutscenes, characters will also interact with each other all the time, even more than the previous games. Sometimes you're just exploring and driving and you'll hear the characters talking to each other, sometimes directly related to the plot, or maybe just reminiscing about the past, telling stories to each other, and it all adds character to the plot. You've even got a couple of dialogue options this time around. They don't affect the course of the story, but they give you some choice on what to say at certain times. And when I saw Nathan say the line that I picked, I couldn't help but feel like, yeah, I made him say that. There's also a lot of optional flavor text. From time to time you'll see a dialogue balloon pop up and you can choose to ask what's up if you want to know more about a certain character's state of mind. And finally, collectibles are finally interesting. You still got those useless treasures, but this time around there are also journals and notes to pick up that tell some really interesting stories and help you understand the main plot a lot better. Overall, I thought the pacing was really good. There were a couple of chapters that perhaps overstayed their welcome, but nothing too egregious to retract from my experience. It's a pretty damn good story. But the narrative just by itself wouldn't be all that if not for the technology present in this game. Graphically, it is gorgeous. Character models are amazing, with facial expressions sometimes revealing more than a character's lines. It is by far the best looking game I've ever seen on a console. I don't know what kind of wizardry Naughty Dog has pulled again, because no other console game comes close to this. When outdoors, the water, the muddy roads, the foliage, it all looks incredible. And the game constantly presents you with breathtaking vistas. While indoors, the game reminded me once again of The Last of Us, where you can look into a room and immediately put together a story based on the objects that you see lying around. There's a handcrafted attention to detail here, even in areas that are completely optional and most players will never see. That is just unprecedented. The single player portion of the game runs at a gorgeous 1080p, and with these looks, the 30 frames per second won't be a problem, but obviously 60 would be preferable. After you finish the game, there are new visual options that are worth seeing. I'm not saying they make the game worth replaying, but replay your favorite encounters with a few effects turned on. It's pretty rad. But let's talk gameplay. There are plenty of new additions to the Uncharted formula. First, you now have a rope, which is used a lot throughout the campaign. You will use it to clear large gaps during platforming sections and even in combat by landing on an enemy, punching him in the face and grabbing his gun out of the air. No matter how many times I did this, I always had a smile on my face. There's also driving this time around. I believe we've all seen the Jeep in a couple of demos, but there are some other surprises waiting for you. Driving is competent. It's not like this is a professional racing game, so the controls don't need to be too tight. They are good enough for what the game asks you to do. Just don't expect to become the drift king in Uncharted 4. The platforming has received a lot of improvements, not only with the use of the rope, but now you've also got a python that you can stick in certain walls to create new handholds. But what really impressed me the most was just the level of control you had over Nate's arms. Using the left stick, you can precisely move Nathan's hand wherever you want, and it just feels great. Unfortunately, this being Uncharted, instead of carefully placing your hand where you should, you can just jump from handhold to handhold, which is actually a faster and more efficient way of traversing the level. level. So on one hand, it's a great technology that I'd love to see implemented on other games, but on the other hand, most players are just gonna jump all the time to traverse faster, and this feature won't get the credit it deserves. The shooting feels a lot better this time around. Enemies don't feel bullet spongy. For the first time ever, I didn't turn the difficulty to easy after getting annoyed about shooting the same guy for 5 minutes. Your reticle has small prompts that tell you when you kill an enemy or get a headshot. It's a very fast prompt, but it's enough to notice it. And it helped a lot in knowing when I killed an enemy and could move on, cause you know, sometimes they don't die, they just fall behind cover and get up after a bit. The game also gives you an option to snap your reticle to your targets. It's a very aggressive auto-aim system that I really wouldn't recommend because it just takes away whatever challenge this game has to offer. But it's there as an option in case you want it. Stealth has also been greatly improved. Enemy patrols are more fluid and believable and not stale like the previous games. There's an awareness meter that fills up before an enemy actually spots you, and if they lose sight of you, they'll go into an investigative state and you can resume your stealth takedowns. You can even mark your enemies. This time around, the game doesn't give you silenced weapons. I honestly feel if they gave you silenced weapons, the stealth would be too easy, so maybe that's why. And it's just not a full-blown stealth game because of that, and it's missing the gadgets and the distractions, but it's a massive step forward in the field that the series really needed. I found myself using stealth every time I could, and you don't need to worry about your AI companions. Again, like The Last of Us, they could bump into an enemy and they won't be detected. Detection only works on you, the player. Hand-to-hand combat has changed a bit. You no longer have a counter-attack button. Instead, you just smash square to attack your enemies and hit circle to roll away from punches. But there's also a lot more contextual action happening this time. Smashing enemies into walls, being grabbed and about to die when one of your friends saves you, or alternatively, your friends grab someone and wait for you to finish them off. It felt like a great action movie. On the other hand, if you're the type of player who likes to clear events without getting hit once, that might be a tougher challenge this time around. After all, action movie protagonists always take a couple of punches before winning a fight. The puzzles are really the weak link on this one. Most of them simply require you to move a box from one place to another, and when it's something more elaborate, it's nothing that gets close to what we had in previous entries. The puzzles felt brainless and uninspired, just another task to do before moving on with the story, not challenging at all. So if this was your favorite part about these games, I think you'll be disappointed. And of course, it wouldn't be an Uncharted game without the big set pieces. It's hard to talk about this because what's so great about them so often is the element of surprise. So I'll just say that there are a few callbacks to some of our favorite set pieces of the previous Uncharted games, and there are plenty of new ones. So many of them, really. The game is full of big set piece moments. Explosions, crumbling buildings, collapsing bridges, it's got it all. And it's just better than ever. And you're gonna have to take my word for it, because saying any more would be spoiling the surprise. The multiplayer is there and is serviceable, I guess, but I'm guessing most shooter fans would prefer to play other games in the long term. You've got 3 game modes: Team Deathmatch, Capture Points, and Capture the Flag, and a pretty decent progression system where you unlock more guns, mods, and mysticals, which are like special artifacts with superpowers. You can play as any of the protagonists or villains from the Uncharted series, and you can even customize them if you got the vanity items. You get them by purchasing chests from the store with currency that you earn by playing matches, or buy them with real money. Yes, microtransactions are a thing. You've got ranked play, and I have no doubt that some people will get into that, but to me it was just an experience that ran its course pretty fast, and I have no desire to get back to it. Getting into cover doesn't always work for some reason, which was never a problem in single player, and sometimes you're trying to roll away from fire and end up taking cover on the wrong side of the wall, because rolling and taking cover are both on the same button. Like these issues, I found a couple of others that weren't a problem in a single player scenario, but taking it into a competitive one showed some of the game's flaws. However, if you're into it, there's a co-op mode and new maps coming out later this year that could perhaps keep you going. And it's awesome that they made the multiplayer portion of the game 60 frames per second. They may have had to downscale the resolution a little bit, but it's really nothing too noticeable and the game runs pretty stable on multiplayer. Uncharted 4 is the best Uncharted game in the series, a fitting end for a great franchise. Its visual improvements, new characters, new ways to tell the story, and the gameplay enhancements make this game an instant classic that I won't soon forget. It's not a perfect game. I mentioned the multiplayer just kind of being there, some chapters kind of overstay their welcome, the uninspired puzzles, but these problems feel like such a pet peeve compared to the fun that I had with the game. If you like the Uncharted games, pick this one up. If you're a fan of action-adventure games, pick this one up. It sets a new bar for games in this genre, and it is undoubtedly a very fulfilling action campaign. That's our review for Uncharted 4. If you've got any thoughts on the game yourself, please leave it in the comments below. Let's talk about Uncharted. While you're down there, click the like button if you enjoyed the video and subscribe for more gaming goodness. I've been Globku. Thank you for watching. Bye.